So could we go to first white paper in the name of Councillor Amanda Carter? Councillor Carter? You're mute, Councillor Carter.
Lord Mayor.
That's it.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now unmuted.
Yes, you are.
The managed approach was first trialled in 2014. I think a number of us were very sceptical and pointed out the potential problems and concerns. We now have evidence of how it's worked in practice and have direct lived experience of the local communities. In 2018, we called on the administration to prove that they could make it work or suspend the policy, and we welcome the announcement of the independent review into its future. The survey by the Council commissioned to review tells us nothing and has lost all credibility. Although it does concede that the findings cannot be taken as representative of the people of Holbeck, at last the voice of Holbeck, the community, and importantly the children have had a say. Listen to this. One child said, "It's hard living in Holbeck. Prostitutes getting into car makes me feel vulnerable. It's not managed at all. We are approached. What children are experiencing in Holbeck is not just wrong, it's dangerous. How long is it before a child is assaulted, abducted or raped? The prostitutes in Holbeck mostly have mental health issues, addiction to drugs and alcohol, and are controlled by men. Their life is short and filled with violence committed by punters and pimps. How do parents even begin to explain that it isn't right and it's not safe, even though the council are openly allowing this to happen? Don't we have a duty to protect children? It's only a question of time before something terrible happens to a child. By allowing them and normalising this terrible way of life.
Cut off.
Where are the serious safeguarding children's issue? What about the residents? Don't they deserve better? How would you like it on your doorstep? Local opposition to the managed area is strong and they have evidence to back it up. Isn't it time you stood up for them? I want to see more effort from Children's Services protecting the children who live and go to school in this area. I want to see work done on an exit strategy. I'll sit down and work with you. I'll help you lobby government. The administration needs to now move at pace to build on the work of the independent review and design a much better way of listening and engaging with the people of Holbeck. We ask that this strategy should be part of a regular series of reports that come to Executive Board to include updates, input. It's time for action, to start to reduce the size of the managed approach and work on an exit strategy. The administration must listen and engage effectively and then respond to the genuine concerns of the people who live there. I move the white paper in my name, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Robinson, second.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I formally second and reserve the right to speak, which I will be executing.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, thank you, Lord Mayor. I have to say that I'm moving this amendment today with a feeling of disappointment. And I hope that everyone in this council recognises on-street sex working is a difficult and sensitive issue, and it shouldn't be kicked around like a political football. It's something we need to respond to in the right way for so many reasons. This is part of the reason we have had an independent review into the managed approach. The review had a number of recommendations and we are working our way through them in a structured and organised way. And because we realise it's a sensitive issue, I wanted to make sure that opposition members were kept fully informed and briefed, which is why I invited Councillors Carter and Robinson to be part of that work going forward with the recommendations of the independent review. I would further like to add, when it comes to the managed approach, safeguarding is a top priority, and that covers everyone that might be impacted by it. If you have any concerns about activity, Councillor Carter, then can I urge you to report those through to the police on the dedicated number, and at least through the channels that you know are open to you. We all know that there are people who are ideologically opposed to on-street sex work, and there are a wide variety of views. The managed approach came about to mitigate the impact on local residents because on-street sex working was already taking place in the local area. And previous policing approaches, which were mostly enforcement-led, had been found to achieve very little, with a significant number of complaints regarding sex working taking place in residential areas continuing to be reported. It's why we considered and progressed the managed approach. I have to say that I'm pleased with the work that we've done so far. It was not an easy start and it's not been an easy journey, but there is an overwhelming feeling things have got better from almost everyone involved. We have put a huge amount of work into working with local residents, local members and police to try and reduce the impact on the local community. It's seen the introduction of a dedicated call line for the reporting of on-street sex work related incidents, a fully resourced dedicated policing team, an effective strategic command and management structure put in place since late 2018, as well as dedicated cleaning crews. That isn't to say that there isn't still work to do, and the independent review recognises that. It put forward a rigorous way of getting views, including focus groups, individual interviews, interviews with pressure groups, attending all the Listening Well meetings, I might add, which the author of the review included in his own review. Resident surveys and social media promotion, making sure we get a full community view is absolutely crucial for us, and it is a recommendation in the report that we are already making good progress on. We are developing new arrangements for consultation and engagement to ensure that we capture the views of local residents, as well Councillor Carter knows. There have been many different opportunities to raise these concerns, Lord Mayor, before the independent review reported. I can honestly say I'm seriously disappointed with this white paper today.
Thank you. Councillor Scott?
My Lord Mayor, I'm happy to support this white paper amendment. I'd like to agree with Councillor Cooper's point that this feels like an odd time to bring the white paper. Yes, the independent review is finished. As a council, we're working through its recommendations. However, while the Listening Well report has finished, the report is still being finalised. I've been really careful not to jump in with ideas about the future before the Listening Well project is finalised. That's what listening looks like. It takes time, but it is worth it. There's no foot dragging, no trying to hide the unflattering parts of the report of either of these reports, and we will continue to engage with residents on how to move forward. Councillor Carter talks about the residents' voice. I wonder how many residents she has talked to, not representatives of campaign groups, but actual residents inside the M621. I wonder if she's even consulted the Voice of Holbert before issuing this white paper. I've read the draft Listening Well report, and there's no doubt that street-based prostitution impacts on residents, both young and old, and in particular women. This is why we need to work together to reduce street-based prostitution. If you look at the actual data in the draft report, students are more worried about drugs, about violence, about alcohol, and about gangs. See page 24. And it shows the priority for most residents isn't getting rid of the managed approach. See page 22. To be clear, this does not take away from the seriousness of the issue or the impact it is having on residents. The issue of street prostitution is a subject that needs ongoing, serious, adult conversations and level heads, not sporadic political point scoring, which this white paper is part of. It's important we give the Listening Well project a proper chance to put forward its recommendations and look at a structured and organised way to respond to them. We need to work hard to ensure that residents' voices are heard, not outside pressure groups on either side of the debate. Like Councillor Cooper said, this isn't a what-if situation. This is daily life. While street-based prostitution exists, we need to reduce its impact on our community. The managed approach isn't perfect, not by any means, but I believe it remains the best solution given the UK legal framework and the solution the Council is committed to improving year on year. Getting rid of the zone sadly does not get rid of street-based prostitution either, as we've actually seen during lockdown. It just limits our ability to reduce the impact on the local community, as well as the people, predominantly women, who are selling their bodies. As a councillor, I extend an invitation to Councillor Carter or any other elected member to have a candid dialogue outside of this political theatre about how we can improve the lives of residents in my ward. I've met with and will meet with anyone who wants to discuss the merits or otherwise of the managed approach, in the belief that using the collective wisdom of residents, elected members, council officers and the police is valuable. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor David Blackburn.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think starting on this, I think I've always been somewhat agnostic about my approach to the managed area, and being open to the information I get. Certainly 2 years ago, I think 2018, when it came up before, and we said we'd have a review, a motion came for a review. I supported that because that was the feeling I was getting fed to me from people who live down there, and certainly my own members who live down there, that the system wasn't working properly. When the independent review took place and it was reported to Executive Board, I got a briefing on that. What concerned me, and I couldn't get any good answers, and I was going to raise it at the council meeting, but we didn't get to that meeting, was the fact that the lack of numbers of people who live locally who had been consulted, and the lack of businesses that had been consulted. But as I said, I have an open mind on this. I have no way, one way or the other. But the fact is, when I come to check and speak to people I know who live in the area, the feeling I get back is that it is not working right. If you saw last night's Look North, the principal of the Gauze Academy and some school children were on there about problems they're having from the managed approach area. And I've got in front of me at the moment the draft of the Listening Well report, and it don't make good reading. So as far as I'm concerned, I think that we should pass the motion in the name of Miranda Carter. I've got to say that the amendment from the executive member does have does show that she seems to be listening, but I think we may have got past that point. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Galton.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. Some of the administration speakers so far have made a good point about how some of the councillors that are concerned about this subject don't live within inner city South Leeds, and therefore do not have a direct lived experience of the managed zone. However, some of us have had experience of living near a red light district, and when I was growing up as a child, I lived next door to the Spencer Place red light zone that there was in Chapeltown. And I know that some of the problems which are being experienced and have been highlighted today are the problems that you get with any red light district where a district gets known for having available prostitution on its streets. The difference here is that the managed zone is meant to imply that the experience of both those who are selling sex in that area, but also the general community who are associated with it, would feel some benefit from such management. And I think this is the issue that we have here now. My group has consistently supported the managed zone for several years, and personally I've been involved through my Rotary group with fundraising for the Joanna Project, which helps women who have to work in that area because of the circumstances that they're in. And I know that a lot of those that are servicing those women to try and get them to leave prostitution as their way of living, they appreciate the stability that the managed zone delivers. However, the testimony that we've had lately from people like the principal at the Ruth Gorse Academy and the direct relations of experience by pupils of that school should make us reflect and think, do we need to reevaluate what success looks like when we're talking about a managed zone? We shouldn't just talk about how effectively we are listening to the people that we already talk to. We need to be thinking, If other people are telling us there's something wrong, how do we engage with that as well and rethink and reevaluate? So we are going to support the Conservative motion here, but it's in the spirit of not rejecting the managed zone incompleteness, but to look at, can the managed zone be delivered in a more effective way to actually live up to what it's meant to be? Because at the moment there are too many failures within it, and it is not a good livable experience for the community that it's with, and it therefore lets down the women it is meant to be supporting as well, because they are not supported by the general neighbourhood that they're working within.
Councillor Galton? Councillor Field?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, enough is enough. This administration is hanging on to a policy that has run away from them, and they'd rather cling on to this inherently exploitative albatross around the shoulders of this city than admit defeat. The prostituted women of Holbeck are now barely functioning as human beings, and this council has allowed demand for their bodies to spread like a disease. We are now at a point where the head of the local secondary school has pleaded for the end to the managed approach, as he fears it is only a matter of time before a schoolgirl is abducted. It is a child safeguarding emergency. Bearpunting.net. Go on that website, that's bearpunting.net. Have a look at the men on there who review the women of Holbeck using some of the basest, most morally reprehensible language you'll ever come across. When there's no threat of arrest, men not only feel free and cocky and safe, they see paying for sex as a utility like any other, so a lack of consent is just poor customer service. The opportunity and freedom this council is affording men to buy and abuse women without consequence informs every aspect of their behaviour and moral compass and affects society as a whole. This council needs to recognise prostitution as violence against women and fund proper exit strategies. This council needs to go after the demand. Instead of free rein for these lowlives at certain hours, we need to ramp up prosecution so they finally face consequences. We need to catch them, out them, and shame them. Apparently, we are lighting up the Civic Hall to mark International Day for the elimination of violence against women. Well, I suggest the Labour group takes that light and shines it over Holbeck instead, if they're that proud of the managed approach. Councillor Cooper, you are not dealing with sex work, you are dealing with modern slavery. And shame on every woman in this council who calls herself a feminist for supporting this. We will be supporting the white paper in the name of Councillor Carter and call for the Nordic model now.
Councillor Stevenson?
Well, thank you, Lord Mayor. I am rarely lost for words in council or elsewhere, but I have to admit to being absolutely stunned this week by the complete lack of compassion, contrition or political nous from this administration. Councillor Cooper says she's disappointed to be discussing this today. Well, she should take a moment to think about the fears of parents living in that community. Councillor Scopes might want to know the views of his own residents sending their children to school in that community. In a week when child safeguarding concerns within the so-called managed approach have been reported on national television, in nearly every national newspaper this morning, it's quite frankly disgraceful that this administration actively chose to move an amendment that removes any reference whatsoever to children's safeguarding, pupil welfare or schools. Not a single exec member within the portfolio has spoken on the concerns raised by school professionals, school leaders in that area this week. It cannot be right, Lord Mayor, that the administration can claim that the managed approach is working well when faced with the harsh truth that an approach sponsored by the council and championed by the executive member has led to schoolgirls being approached for sex on their way home from school. Increasingly, child safeguarding in Leeds seems to be buried under wider political narratives by this administration. How on earth can the council promote its child-friendly credentials whilst actively creating a huge safeguarding risk to pupils in the area? Be under no mistake, Lord Mayor, when this council chose to manage the zone, When this council chose to stamp the council insignia on it, this council took direct responsibility for the area. The safeguarding concerns raised by pupils in South Leeds are a direct result of a political decision in the creation of the council's managed zone. And to add insult to injury, this administration has attempted to simply dismiss the safeguarding concerns by advising pupils to let the council know of any instances of wrongdoing in the area. These are hollow words, Lord Mayor. Only last week, the council's Safer Leeds officer acknowledged in correspondence with schools in the area that these safeguarding concerns were raised with the council last year, yet nothing has changed. I doubt anything I can say today will make the executive member change her stubborn mind. But I hope at least a small amount of humility has allowed for a sense of shame when reading the distressing experiences of children in the area. So I want to close, Lord Mayor, briefly by reading the words of a school pupil named Hawa Mariam, who has published an open letter today to Leeds City Council. Hawa says, I'm 16 years old. I've lived in Holbeck all my life, and I'm the fourth generation in my family to live here. Holbeck is my home, yet I'm ashamed to call it so. The managed area was supposed to make it easier for women to exit this trade, therefore reducing its impact on Holbeck. So can the council tell us, has the managed area scheme allowed more women to exit the trade than it's allowed to be introduced to it? Is there a next step or a phase to this scheme? What is the exit
Councillor
criteria?
Stevenson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Esselberg.
Lord Mayor, comrades, I'm proud to be supporting the amendment in the name of Councillor Cooper. We all acknowledge that the managed approach is not ideal, and I think it's important that in this amendment we acknowledge it's not a permanent solution either. However, it is the solution that we need for the moment, and it's a solution that is making things better. The independent review carried out found that it was, and from what we are hearing from people in the area, most people think it is making things better too. But we know that that's not everybody, and we all know we need to find ways of engaging with more people on the issue, but all the evidence does point to the fact things are getting better. We know that this is a very emotive subject, and it can be easy to lose sight of the fact that the women who work in the managed approach form some of the most vulnerable and marginalised sections of our society. It's important that we remember that. If we were to scrap the managed approach right now, the problems that it was set up to address will not just disappear, and the women won't stop on-street sex work. Since the managed approach was introduced, it's a fact that these women feel safer. In 2014, only 7% of crimes against women working in this area reported, and that's now over 50%. Part of the fact is that the women feel able to report crimes against them, and they feel they can seek justice as they've seen men prosecuted for the attacks, and this is a huge step forward for them. I would also like to mention the amazing work the charity Basis Yorkshire are doing, who work tirelessly to support the women on the streets. We know from what Basis have reported that since the introduction of the managed approach, they're able to work with women for longer and are better able to offer help and support. For some women, this means getting them out of that situation, that life, off the street and into treatment if that is what is needed. It's one of two core parts of the managed approach, making sure that we can keep these women safer. That's not to say that it's any lesser or greater than engaging with the community, but it's a site that too many can lose focus on and forget that when we talk about the managed approach, we are talking about actual people. People who are not just a statistic to debate in these meetings or to protest. They are mostly vulnerable women who deserve the same levels of protection and support, and more importantly, the same levels of respect and compassion as anybody else. I am pleased to support this amendment, Lord Mayor, and the work that we are doing in Holbeck.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. In moving this, in seconding rather this white paper that's been moved by Councillor Carter, we've covered a lot of issues already in the debate. We know the history of the managed zone that's been sketched out. The challenges are clear. What the BBC and other news agencies have reported this week is deeply concerning. And what I've read about what's going on in the managed zone and what people have told me, I am very, very concerned about. The review has taken place and it appears to have failed to have adequately recorded the residents' engagement in a substantial way that raises all the concerns that they've raised. Now, we should thank the police, the officers of the council, the third sector bodies and others who are working to try and improve the lives of the vulnerable women in the zone. And let's be clear, Councillor Hesselwood is right. These are vulnerable women. These are women who are battling addiction, health issues, housing issues. They're battling the drugs, violence, alcohol, gangs, the issues that Councillor Scopes talked about that young people are fearing in the area. However, the managed zone does not seem to have an exit strategy. It isn't a strategy that seems to have a future. The Labour amendment says that it isn't a permanent solution. It appears that at the moment, it is the only permanent solution that is being offered. There is no approach to change or veer off or do something different. What our white paper suggests in terms of reducing the size of the managed zone, and if it's true, the information that I've been passed and the statistics, that less women are working in the area than they were in 2014 and 2018, then presumably the size of the zone can be reduced and you can target support and efforts far more adequately in a far more intelligent manner. But that doesn't seem to be the case at the moment. So what we need to do is look at what has been a success and build on it, the work that's been done by third sector agencies, but be very, very clear with the people of Holbeck that this is not the future for them and that an exit strategy, a way out of the current circumstances that they find themselves in, is what has been proposed by this council and what does have that council's mark and stamp of approval. Regular reports back to Executive Board mean that we discuss the issues and the people involved too, rather than this be some sort of abstract. And it is right that we discuss this rather than try to sweep it under the carpet. Within the report, within the reports and the information, there's also talk of a PR strategy for Holbeck. I'm afraid that a PR strategy that advocates the managed zone is no strategy at all. An exit strategy is what is required. It is certainty, support, help, and action that people need, including the women involved. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Can I call on Councillor Amanda Carter to now sum up?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Scopes, I just wonder what planet you're on and if you actually talk to your residents. Any mother cannot be failed to moved by what those children have said. You need to go and talk to your residents. Nowhere has Councillor Cooper, in her amendment, does she comment on children's safeguarding. You now have evidence from young people themselves telling you of their frightening experiences. Are you ignoring them? Are you saying it's not true? Despite your assurances through the BBC, it's my understanding that it's over 3 weeks since the Acting Director of Children's Services received a letter from the Gorse Academy highlighting the issues. I'm told there's no reply yet. How dare you pretend it's a child-friendly city? Or are you just child-friendly elsewhere and not Holbeck? Councillor Blake, Councillor Scopes, Councillor Cooper, you should be utterly ashamed of yourselves. Maybe it's just your well-known antipathy, particularly Councillor Blake's, towards the academies and Gorse in particular that's impaired your judgment. By continuing the managed approach, you are damning the area for good and the lives of the people who live there. You're preventing significant investment and development into Holbeck. If you want to regenerate the area, you'll have to scrap the managed approach, or because you're never wrong, you must move it elsewhere, so watch out, citizens of Leeds. My Lord Mayor, I'm calling for action now before it's too late. This isn't a political football. This is for a long, long time. You've had 6 years to sort this out and you haven't. Stop shouting to the world about how good the managed area is. Stop pretending it works. Put your egos back in a box and stop messing about with people. Get this sorted out. I move the white paper, Lord Mayor.
We'll now go for a vote. I'll call the whips to vote. We'll vote on the amendment of Councillor Cooper. Councillor Dawson, are you for, against, or abstain?
Lord Mayor, we're for the amendment in the name of Councillor Cooper.
Councillor Cohen, are you for, against, or abstain?
I'm certainly against, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Campbell, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Liberal group are against.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you for, against, or abstain?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The MBIs, we are against. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Councillor Field, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Garforth and Swillington independents are against, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Anne Blackburn, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Greens are against, Lord Mayor.
That's been carried. I now call for the vote on the substantive motion in the name of Councillor Cooper. Councillor Dawson, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Labour Group vote for, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Curran, are you for, against, or abstain?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The Conservative Group are against.
Councillor Campbell, are you for, against, or abstain?
The Liberal Democrat Group are against.
Councillor Hutchinson, are you for, against, or abstain?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. The MBI Group are against.
Councillor Field, are you for, against, or abstain?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We are against.
And Councillor Anne Blackburn, are you for, against, or abstain?
Abstain, Lord Mayor.
That's been carried.